Hello, welcome to the Inlay. I'm Dean Bigfoot, and today's episode is going to be a little bit different than normal in two very big, very important ways. Number one, I'm going to actually be reviewing two games today instead of just one. And number two, this is not actually going to be scripted. I usually, write out a script of everything I'm going to say, and then, plan out my shots. Today's episode is going to be a little bit more impromptu, a little bit more intimate. And it's very appropriate that we're going to be a little bit more intimate today because the first game we're going to take a look at is Love Letter. Now this is usually the part where I say, taking you inside the box, and then I lift the lid out. But I can't actually do that with this because, as you can see, Love Letter doesn't come in a box. It comes in this nice little velvet pouch. And inside this lovely little pouch, you're going to find some cubes, some little tiny red cubes, lipstick red, love red. You're going to find some reference cards, some lovely, lovely reference cards. You're going to find a little tiny manual, a little instruction booklet that you can probably read in about a minute and a half. And then you're going to find 16 cards. And you're going to wonder where the hell the rest of the game is. And then realize, oh man, these 16 cards, these are the game. This is the game. And the first most extraordinary thing about Love Letter is that it is only 16 cards. That they're able to fit an entire game into 16 cards. Now, before I just say the words 16 cards another 30 times, let's describe the game. Each player is a suitor trying to marry a lovely, lovely princess. But here's the problem. The princess is distraught. She's sad because her mother has been arrested. She's locked herself away in a tower, in the highest tower of the castle. So you can't woo her with your songs. You can't serenade her with your poetry. You must win over her heart with your love letters. Get it? Name of the game, Love Letter. So, and as she is locked away in the castle, you can't just go over there and give her your love letters. You need to rely on intermediaries. You need to rely on people to carry your letter from person to person. And then hopefully, by the end of the day, she would have found your love letter and become that much more infatuated with you. So how does this work? Well, each player will have a hand of cards. Well, they'll have a hand of card. Your hand consists of one card. Now, this card is the person that currently has your love letter. And on your turn, you're going to draw a single card. And then of those two cards, you're going to discard one of them for your effect, either keeping your love letter with the person you had, or switching it to a new person and discarding the person you had. Now, at the end of the game day, which is when the deck runs out, the person around the table who has the highest number, each card has a number in the corner, which is that person's closeness to the princess. The person with the highest number wins the round, and they get one of these lovely love cubes. And the first person to a certain amount of those love cubes wins the entire game. And the amount that they need to get depends on the number of players. If you're playing with 2 people, you need 7 cubes. If you're playing with 3 people, you need 5. And if you're playing with 4 people, you need 4. So, each person will have that one card. And offhand, it seems incredibly simple, and it is. But it's also probably one of the best bluffing games I've ever played. It's almost like poker, except with just the one card in your hand. This game has somehow managed to make choosing between 2 cards an incredibly difficult decision. A decision that you have to think about, because a lot of the cards here will affect differently depending on what your opponents have. For instance, there is the guard, which is the card there is the most of in the deck. There's 5 of these in the deck. And what the guard allows you to do is to pick another player, and then pick a card like, let's say, the prince. And if that person happens to have the prince, they're out of the round. and their letter will never get delivered this day. But there's also cards like the Baron. Now what the Baron allows you to do is to pick another player and secretly compare your cards. Now if the card that you have has a higher number than your opponent's, that opponent is out of the round. The thing is, this is great because that opponent is out of the round. However, you've just given the players left a little bit of information. Let's say you knocked out one of your opponents out of the round, and they discard their card, and everyone sees that it's a prince. Now there are only 3 cards higher than the prince, which is the king, the countess, and the princess herself. Now you've just told everyone around the table that you either have the king, the countess, or the princess. Now if one of them has a countess, then they know that you either have the princess or the king. And this game is all about that kind of interaction. It's about trying to figure out what your opponents have so you can take them out, so you can make sure that they don't get the letter. They don't deserve the princess. They're scoundrels. The princess needs to end up with you because you are a beautiful prince. You're going to treat her right. You're going to make sure that she's the happiest princess that there can ever be. Now, this is what I love about Love Letter. I love Love Letter because it is able to create a level of tension around the table where you have 4 grown men holding a single card and not saying a word. Just looking at everyone else thinking, that guy, he's got the princess, doesn't he? Wait, no. He discarded the Baron last turn and he won, so he definitely has the princess or the king. So you're all going to be doing this mental math, and it keeps you involved with the entirety of the game because every card someone discards is one more piece of information that you can use against them. And the game is really quick. It takes about 20 minutes entirely, with each individual round taking 2-3 minutes maybe. And it's cheap. I think Love Letter costs $12. There's really no reason for you not to pick it up. You really need to. You'll thank me for it later. Now the next game I'd like to show you is also very appropriate. Being as today, the day I'm recording this, is the 4th of July, what better game to play than a game about fireworks? This is Hanabi. Now, Hanabi is also worth note because it is nominated for this year's Spiel des Jahres, which is a award. It's a board game award in Germany. It's German Board Game of the Year, which is important for board games because the Germans love board games. The board game that ends up winning the Spiel des Jahres will usually sell like 500,000 copies and go on to become incredibly famous and, you know, get all of the paparazzis and things. Anyways, so Hanabi. When you open up this box, and it does have a box to open, you'll get the instruction leaflet. It's literally just a single sheet of paper. You'll get a bunch of cool little round tokens that fall on the ground. And then you'll get your fireworks. Now in this game, each player is a pyrotechnician. And together, collectively, you're trying to put on the best fireworks show that Japan has ever seen. How are you going to do this? Well, you're trying to put together sets of cards. Now, there are 5 suits, 5 colors of cards, which is yellow, white, red, green, and blue. Okay, and they're all numbered from 1 to 5. And collectively, you're trying to put together the sets of the individual colors from 1 to 5. So you want, you know, the set of all the white 1 through 5, and then the set of all green 1 through 5, and so on and so forth. Offhand, that sounds incredibly easy, and it doesn't really sound like a game. But here's where it gets interesting. When you're handed your hand of cards, you hold this hand backwards. You can never look at your hand directly. So that's where it gets a little bit harder. Now on your turn, you can do one of 3 things. The first thing is to give information. You can tell one of the other players around the table something about their hand. You can either tell them about the color of the cards in their hand or the number. You can tell them something like, if this was their hand, you could tell them, oh, these two cards are both white. Or you can tell them that, that these are both twos. And they're going to use that information to move forward the game. Like if you told them at the beginning of the game that both of these cards are ones, you're basically telling them they need to play one because none of the sets are out and these will begin the sets. You know. But every time you give someone a piece of information, you have to turn over one of these little clock tokens. Now there are 8 of these. That means at most you can tell people 8 pieces of information between the players at the table. That's not a lot. Once all of them are flipped over, you can no longer tell anyone information, and you have to do one of the other 2 options. The second option is to discard a card in your hand. Because there are multiples of most of the cards, there are 3 copies of every one. There's 2 copies of all the 2s, 3s, and 4s, but there's only 1 copy of each 5, leading to a little bit of a gamble every time you discard a card, unless you know what you're discarding because of what your other players have told you. So every time you discard a card that you presumably, hopefully don't need anymore, you draw a new one, and you get to turn one of those clock tokens face up again, so that you have the opportunity to share more information. Now the third thing you can do in your hand is, of course, play a card. Add a card to the set. Now if it's a card that can be played down, like this yellow 1, it'll start the yellow set. Great. You know, you're one step closer to your Great Fireworks Show. However, if it doesn't go towards that set, like let's say it's this red 2, but you don't have the red 1, you've just made a mistake. Which means that you have to remove a chip from this stack of fuse tokens. So if you make a mistake, you remove one. If you make another mistake, you remove another one. If you make one last mistake, your fireworks show has ended before it's really begun. And presumably all your fireworks explode and it doesn't turn out well for the pyrotechnicians. But let's not talk about that. There are 2 other ways for this game to end, which is, number 1, you complete all 5 sets and you've put on the most dazzling, amazing, extraordinary fireworks show that anyone has ever seen. It's a fireworks show that will be talked about for generations. You know, grandfathers would tell their grandchildren about that fireworks show, and their grandchildren will wonder, why weren't they born yet to see the majesty of your fireworks show? Or the deck will run out, and you'll count out how many points you have. Each set will give you an amount of points depending on the highest value that is currently visible. So if you have 2 sets that are at 5, that's 10 points, and then 2 more sets that are at 2, that's 4 points, that's 14, and then the last set gets to 4, so that's 18 points altogether. Then it has a little chart in the rule leaflet that tells you how you did depending on how many points you got. So it's a sort of cute little cooperative beat your score kind of game. And it's frankly great. First of all, what you're doing in this game, holding cards backwards, is inherently absurd. And it gets everyone around the table laughing as they fight their basic instinct to put the card towards them. Especially if you're playing with other board gamers, but even if you're not, everyone has played cards. Everyone knows how card games work, and this game breaks that rule. Everyone knows that you hold your cards tight, close, but this game makes you put your cards in front of you while you look away, hoping that you can divine some information, or not cheat by accidentally saying some information. It's also a game that pushes the limits of what cheating is. Because when you give someone information like, those are all 2s, or those are all 2s, it's using your inflection to try to imply more information that is actually feasible to give. It got me and my friends into a philosophical discussion about what the boundaries of cheating is and then what counts as cheating. And I say that using inflection to heavily imply that they need to get rid of all the 2s in their hand is, I would say that's not cheating. That's using your basic instinct to communicate to your advantage. They didn't buy it. Anyways, Hanabi is great. It's really easy to teach, and like Love Letter, it takes about 30 minutes, 20-30 minutes. It's incredibly quick, it's incredibly colorful, and it gets everyone laughing. It's also a game that you can pretty much draft anyone into playing. It's not complicated, there's not a lot going on, and it's about fireworks. It doesn't have a theme that is going to push people away. It's not like it has to do with orcs and aliens. Not that I have anything against games with orcs and aliens. I love games with orcs and aliens. Even in the same game, if there is such a game. If there is, let me know. I'd love to actually play that game. That game sounds rad. Anyways, Hanabi. Great game. So, with that, thank you for watching the Inlay. I hope to see you next time.